And we're here with Scott McLaughlin. Scott, what is up?
Not much, Evan. How you doing?
Doing great. We're recording this on Patriots Day on Marathon Monday. Did you do anything cool for Marathon Monday?
Nope. I sat at home and watched people run from my couch. So
That's the way. It's like that is the move, right? Like that's you sit on the couch, have some coffee, have some breakfast, watch WBZ or something. Watch them cover it.
Yep. Watch the Red Sox too, or watch the marathon. Throw Red Sox on WEEI. Like,
oh yeah,
that's perfect.
That's the dream.
I feel like I've like gone into the city for enough of these over the years. Like, in college it was the more the party scene, and then I've covered marathons and Marathon Monday Red Sox games for EI, but yeah, had the day sort of off today, or more just doing stuff from home today. So
yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was my uncle actually is running in the marathon, so we went down. We're in Framingham, so I just went right down to where he's running past. It was cool, and it's cool to see. Yeah. It's great to see it like back, and you forget like how cool the atmosphere is. It's a beautiful day. So
yeah,
terrific times. I've never been to a Patriots Day Red Sox game though. Never been to one of those. Always looks so fun, but I think right now they're losing like as we record this. So. I don't think we're missing much from that perspective.
Big comeback. Predicting the comeback starts while we're recording.
Yes. Connor and I always say we hope a trade breaks while we record, so we can come on live with it. But maybe it'll be a comeback with a Red Sox game. That's just what we're looking for. We turn into a Red Sox podcast. But anyways, there's Bruins things to talk about. And one interesting thing with this team down the stretch, because it is coming down to the playoffs, even though it feels like the playoffs should be here. Watching the Celtics on Sunday, I kept thinking it should be Bruins playoff time too. It is not. It will start May 2nd. But the Bruins played against the Penguins in a matinee on Saturday. I think the main takeaway from that game was Jeremy Swayman's play in net. Looked a lot better, looked more calm, cool, and collected, so to speak. You also look at how he played the third period against Ottawa in the game before that on Thursday. And it feels like this goaltending conundrum just kind of keeps going back and forth and back and forth. Is one good game a sign that Jeremy Swayman is coming back to where he was in February?
It certainly helps. It was his first win in 2 weeks. It was the first time he had allowed one goal or fewer since February 28th.
Ooh.
So that was just a long stretch of, a combination of his play dipping and just not seeing results even when he, had a better game. So it was big for both of those to happen, for him to play well and you get the result, you get the win. You only give up one goal. Like now, he can at least start to feel like, oh yeah, like this is how this feels. This is, I can do this. It's like, I didn't totally lose it. So that was needed. And with Ullmark out, you need Swayman to step up. Now, news just broke a little bit before we started recording that Ullmark is one of the 4 Bruins who won't be traveling on this 2-game road trip this week. So presumably that'll be 2 more starts for Swayman. I don't think, unless they need to turn to Troy Grosnick, I don't expect them to give him a game. It's all about getting Swayman, as many games as possible to get back on track and hopefully go into the playoffs, on a positive with some momentum. But now you worry about, is Ullmark going to have time to get it back? This will now be, even if he returns this weekend, they have games Saturday and Sunday, almost a week and a half since his last game. What happens to his momentum? Can he get that right back, or is now he going to dip down the stretch and, and that whole thing swings back and forth again? So important stretch for Swayman here, and Ullmark, if he returns this week, he's probably only getting 2 or 3 starts in those last 5 games. So you hope he kind of, is able to pick back up where he left off.
Yeah, that shot between the, into his temple came at a horrible. I mean, it's never going to come at a good time, but that came at a really bad time in the sense that he was rolling. Like he changed the narrative enough that we were kind of sitting around here saying he might be the starter for game 1. And it didn't look like that for a long time. It looked like Swayman had taken the job and taken kind of the bull by the horns. And that kind of completely changed. And this might give, Ullmark going down gives Swayman the chance to sort of regain that sort of confidence and kind of regain his play. Because as we say, with him coming out of the college season, 2 years ago, and last season was COVID shortened. And it was also, he only was, I think it was like 11 starts for him last year. So he has yet to have a full NHL season under his belt. And that's different for a goalie, right? Like that's not just something you transition right into. You go through ups and downs. Whereas at Maine, as we both know with college hockey, you're playing, twice a weekend and, for a few months, but it's nowhere near the rigor of an NHL season. So it all boils down to this, Scott, as you know, and as we know, it all comes down to who starts in game one. And, obviously that can change, but if you were to make that call right now of who would start game one with both goalies healthy, let's say both goalies are healthy for the playoffs that starts today, who do you pick and why?
Well, prior to Ullmark going down, I would have said Ullmark. I think he had moved ahead of Swayman. He was in the middle of his best stretch of the season. Swayman was in the midst of his worst. So, it's hard. For just this scenario, I'm going to assume that Ullmark is able to kind of pick up where he left off and doesn't miss time beyond this 1 week. So I'll say Ullmark still has the edge right now. But if Swayman goes out and has 2 more really good starts this week, then it's probably swung back, if he finishes strong, because I still think Jeremy Swayman has the higher ceiling, and not just long-term, but like within games and within a series. I just think when he's going well versus Ullmark going well, Swayman has a better chance to, whether it's steal you a game or just make that one save that's kind of above and beyond that he really shouldn't make. Swayman has generally been better on those high danger chances or breakaways or 2-on-1s, whatever. I just think he's been more likely than Ullmark to come up with that kind of huge save. Now Ullmark has made a few of those during this stretch. Like it's not like he can't. I just think Swayman has the higher ceiling.
It's like an election. It's like coming down to the general we got on May 2nd, and it's like just back and forth. I agree with you. I think Ullmark starts, but I expect Swayman to come back in. Like I think that's one of the things is with this playoff run, whoever starts game one, I don't expect to start every game. And that's a thought we have not had in Boston regarding the goaltending ever, at least in like the past 15, 16 years. It feels like this could be a platoon where you somehow figure out both. And they've wanted to do this for a while. They've always kind of kicked around the idea, hey, do we throw Halak in for a game? Do we throw Hudobin in for a game? You can do that now. You don't have Tuukka Rask there. You have Ullmark and Swayman. You have Ullmark, who's, I guess more of a veteran, but has never really had any playoff experience. And you have Swayman, who's the rookie, who's young, who's in his first full season. You don't really know what you're going to get out of him in the playoffs. And I think we're all interested to see what you're going to get out of him in the playoffs. Like, I think he kind of has that DNA where I could totally see him going off, like just being lights out for series at a time. But I still see both somehow playing in this playoffs. And I want to see both. That's the other thing. Like I obviously you want a guy to be able to ride and take you to the cup, but I'm so intrigued by both of these guys in the playoffs. And I don't know how you can do it without killing one guy's confidence and and like severely boosting another. Do you see a way in which they can platoon the net in the playoffs?
Yes, it's probably never going to be a super comfortable situation, but I think the way you explain to both guys is that you're treating the playoffs the same way you treated the regular season, which is, we're going to go with who we think gives us the best chance that night, whether that's riding the hot hand or, whatever you want to call it. But they really have not planned out their goalie rotation this season, which is very different than the past. And Bruce Cassidy has talked about this, where with Tuukka Rask, they would almost plan out like the entire season, or at least several months at a time, of like, okay, here's a stretch where you're going to start 3 and 4. Here's a back-to-back. You want to play the first night or second night. Would you rather start this game on the road or this game on, like, they would plan all that out weeks and months in advance with Tuukka Rask. And they have not done that at all this year. It's been very much just week to week, almost just game to game at points where, there's been times where it's been a fairly even split, but then you see in February, they start to ride Swayman a little more. And then prior to Ullmark's injury, they start to ride him a little more and he picks up a couple extra starts. So I think the way you explain it and the way you approach it is we're basically just going to treat the playoffs the same way. So whoever is, hot going in gets game one. If they play well, they're probably going to get game two, but they're probably not going to start 7 in a row. There's certainly, to your point, like I don't see any way that, say, best case scenario, the Bruins make a run to the Cup final. And, at that point, you're talking about 25-ish playoff games. I cannot imagine one of these guys starting like the entire playoff run. It's just so above and beyond anything either one's ever done. Swayman has not started more than 3 games in a row as a pro. Ullmark, I don't think has started more than 3 in a row this season. Maybe he had one stretch of 4, but I think 3 was the max. So, even like if you get to someone starting 4 or 5 games in a row in a series, you're already doing something different than what you've done in the regular season. And, the thing with Rask, it was like he had gone on those kind of playoff runs before. So you knew you had it. You knew he could do it for the most part, other than take out last year where there's an injury complicating it. And, now it becomes, I think it was fair to question whether Rask should have been starting every game last year. But prior to that, he went to a second round in 2010. He went to the Cup final in 2013, starting every game. Same in 2019. Like he had done it multiple times. So you felt comfortable just riding him and not having to wonder about, should he get a game off here or there.
It's interesting as you were talking about using both goalies, how Swayman has yet to play more than 3 games in a row as a pro and Ullmark this season. That's not switching goalies is not a common thing in the playoffs in the sense like, the Islanders last year in the series went from Sorokin to Varlamov because Sorokin was not great, right? Like goalies will get switched out because they're not playing well, but they don't just get switched out because they need a night off or anything like that. I feel like with the tandem the Bruins have, you could see them kind of becoming a trendsetter if they can get this right. If they get it right, where it's like, we're going to start swimming for 2 games, throw Ullmark in, see how he does for game 3. We'll figure out game 4, but we're just going to kind of go back and forth based on how they're doing and rest and all those things. It could become a situation in which the rest of the league sees this. Let's say the Bruins go 2-3 rounds, which is more than, again, if they're a wild card team, which we'll get to in a bit, that's more than they're expected to do, right? If they're going to be good enough to take down the Panthers and these bigger teams might look at this and say, hey, we got to adopt this. We got to adopt this style because already you see this during the regular season where no longer do we see goalies playing, 65, 70 games. Things like that don't happen anymore. That was kind of a quick trend that every team adopted. Teams could look at this and say, they have something over there with this, that you don't have to start the same goalie every game. It's not interrupting guys, being hot and carrying teams. You can throw in if the second guy is actually good, right? If it's, someone who's just a career backup, then I guess you can't do it. But it might become kind of a trend that you see that other teams pick up, kind of like the way they switch off in the regular season. So I'm interested to see if that makes a big difference. If this works, again, if it doesn't work, if it sucks and blows up, then it's not becoming a trend anywhere. So we will see with that.
And it's worth noting that, the one example I can think of a team that tried something at least a little similar to this was the Vegas Golden Knights a couple of years ago, where they had like a planned off day for Marc-Andre Fleury, where they turned to Robin Lehner and got criticized for it because Fleury had been rolling and Lehner stepped in and struggled. And I think that was like 6 or 7 games into the playoffs. So
was that game 1 against the Avalanche too?
I think so. Yeah.
He got killed.
Yeah, that sounds right. And and they got ripped for that because it was like, why aren't you just riding Fleury? Fleury's been a goalie for long playoff runs before. so you do have to be careful, and it certainly opens the door to, criticism if you're Bruce Cassidy and, you get this wrong, or it seems like you're always picking the guy who has an off night or something. Like it's more uncomfortable for Cassidy and for goalie coach Bob Essenza. Like I don't, it's a lot easier when you can just say, all right, Tuukka's the guy, we're starting him unless something goes horribly wrong. Trying to get it right with two goalies that you're rotating or bouncing back and forth, or trying to weigh, when one is starting to run out of steam and needs an off day. Like it's more work, and I'm sure they're not thrilled that they have to do that instead of just, set it and forget it with one guy. But if it's what gives them the best chance to win this year, then that's what they're going to have to do.
It's probably the number one storyline heading into the playoffs, at least for the Bruins. I think number two, though, is this inconsistent play. Because, again, they're coming off a win against Pittsburgh. So it's hard to sit here and criticize that. But Cassidy's talked for the past week or so about the lack of execution with this group. And they had that loss to St. Louis. They'd lost to Ottawa. You see some of the dumb penalties popping up. And I know it's the end of the regular season and it's the slow slog to end. Everyone just wants this over with. They want to get to the playoffs. The writers do, the team does, everyone wants this next part of the regular season done with. But is it concerning that this inconsistent play is popping up now after such a strong few months of play for the Bruins?
A little bit. I mean, look, the injuries definitely, make it, I don't know about easier to swallow, but they excuse some of it for sure. Like when you're talking about the power play struggling, it's like, well, you don't have David Pastrnak, who's one of the most dangerous power play weapons in the NHL. Like, go pick any team, take out their best power play weapon, and see how it looks. Like,
great.
It's not going to be as good. Spoiler. But at the same time, I think what's upsetting Cassidy is like seeing guys' games slip, or a line slip. Like, obviously he benched Trent Frederick and made sure to point out that it wasn't just Frederick, it was that whole line that had started to slip a little. And that was, that's a third line that had been a revelation for the Bruins, that was looking like a clear strength as you headed towards the playoffs. As we know, series are fairly frequently won and lost, but based on your depth forwards. A lot of times you'll see top lines kind of cancel each other out and negate each other. And, whoever has the better depth is the team that ends up advancing. And the Bruins looked like a team that had a really good third line. So when Cassidy sees that slip, and it's not because of injury, that line, Frederick missed one game because of injury, but that line was still together. So, David Pastrnak or Hampus Lindholm or whoever else being out of the lineup shouldn't affect that line. So I think when he identifies that, all right, we're not quite getting what we were a month ago from these guys, it's time for a wake-up call. And that's, where I think some of the frustration for Cassidy comes from. And it's, so on Sunday Skate this week, Andrew Raycroft made this point, and it's spot on, is like, it was a really easy time for Cassidy to call guys out, get upset in practice and yell, or whatever it was he needed to do, because those stretches when guys are hurt are such an easy time for guys to sort of be like, oh, well, like, we're banged up anyways. Let's just get through this and, see you in the playoffs. Like, that's an easy time for the coach to step up and be like, no, we're not coasting. Like, we're still playing. We have stuff to play for. You can say you care about seeding or whatever it is to get guys fired up. And, it's kind of good time to like lay into guys, because there has seemed to be a little bit of a malaise that it's sort of settled in. So, I don't think it's overly concerning where it's like, oh, well, that's it. The Bruins are going out in the first round. They stink now. Like, I'm not doing that. Let me see the team when they get healthy again, assuming they do, which, hey, by the way, Pastrnak and Lindholm aren't traveling on this road trip and are only going to have 5 games to go in the regular season when the Bruins get back. And that's assuming that they're back for game 1 when they get back. Like, you are starting to run a little bit short on time to get those guys back into, ideally you want to at least get them back into a couple games before the playoffs. Yeah.
And again, those 2 injuries have lingered for quite a bit here. Longer, I think, than maybe we thought.
Yeah.
It's getting a little closer to the playoffs. Good point though by Raycroft. I mean, again, like, this is a great time for guys to say, hey, you know what? We can just kind of mail it in for a bit. And obviously, Cassie said, hey, Trent, you like the 9th floor? They get some good popcorn up there. You can watch a game. And then he comes back and scores immediately. So like Bruce has always been pretty good about pushing buttons at right times and getting guys in and out of the lineup at the right time. But you mentioned the first round, because now everyone says, who are the Bruins going to play in the first round? And we see the Celtics drawing a very tough first round matchup in the Brooklyn Nets, even though they're a 7 seed, they're not really a 7 seed. But the Bruins are going to be more of that 7 seed in the playoffs. And granted, again, a lot can change over the next couple of games, but right now the Bruins are solidly in a wild card spot, which comes down to maybe which wild card spot are they, or do they move up to 3rd in the Atlantic? Who knows? Right now, we're going to kind of go off of them being a wild card team, because again, that's what they are. And comes down to, you play 3 teams if you're the wild card. Just depends on where you are. Is it Florida, which it feels like the Bruins are not going to be the second wild card team, and that would be who would play the Panthers. So maybe that's more Washington. So then you look, okay, well, who's the other top team that the Bruins are going to play? Carolina or the New York Rangers? And again, the Rangers, I think, are a much easier opponent than the Hurricanes are, just given the Hurricanes are nasty and they've had your number all season long. And see, I think the Rangers series would be winnable. And I mean, by winnable, I mean, I might actually pick the Bruins in that series, maybe 6-7 games, but I still pick them. Carolina, though, I have a tough time looking at that series and saying, no, things look good. Because even if you're fully healthy, that Carolina series is tough. Now, again, Frederik Andersen recently had to be helped off the ice. Maybe that's a stroke of a blessing for the Bruins. Obviously, you never want to see anybody hurt. I'm just saying for the Bruins' sake. Do you like their chances in any of those series right now?
Yeah, maybe more than you based on how they set that up. But
dire.
Yeah. So Carolina to me is, I almost look at that as like not really the same team as the one that smoked the Bruins in all 3 of their meetings. Like,
and the Bruins aren't the same, and the Bruins are not the same team as those teams that they were. So it has gotten better in that sense.
And by the way, I think they've gone opposite directions. The Bruins have gotten better until this most recent stretch and have been one of the best teams in the second half. The Hurricanes have been under 500 since the trade deadline, 4-5-1 in their last 10. And you touched on it. Freddie Andersen goes down. I don't know if there's an update on Monday. I haven't seen one yet. Jordan Staal also got hurt in that game, who is a key part of that team as their 3rd line center and, really playing like a shutdown role for them. So, I actually think the Rangers are probably going to pass them. Just looking at it like momentum wise, the Rangers have it. Hurricanes don't. In the Rangers, I think the Bruins are a better all around team than the Rangers for sure. But the Rangers have Igor Shesterkin.
That's the tough part.
Like, that can single-handedly swing a series. And that's where that series, maybe as much as anything, I would say Tampa is the other one, but Bruins aren't going to be facing Tampa in the first round, so worry about that one later. But a series against the Rangers, more than any other, I would say you're going to need the Bruins goaltending to step up, because you cannot run into Igor Shesterkin playing at the level he's played at this season and have your goaltending struggle and expect that to even be a long series, never mind one that you win. So if the Bruins goaltending steps up and gets the job done and doesn't give up back-breaking goals against the run of play or something, then I would like the Bruins chances. To me, the key series you really just want to avoid is Florida. Like, that team is on such a heater here, 10-game win streak. I think they've only lost, and they're doing it all with Aaron Ekblad out. I think they've only lost 1 game since he got hurt. and he might return at some point during the first round. Like, they added Claude Giroux, who's averaging a point a game since he got there. I know there's this kind of, the people who firmly believe defense wins championships have real questions about the Panthers. And I understand that to an extent. Generally, we've seen this in the past, right? Some of these high flying teams that go up and down the ice and, score a ton of goals in the regular season, run into a good defense or a goalie in the playoffs, and they can't play those, closer, lower scoring games. So like there could be something to that. If I'm the Bruins, I just wouldn't want to be the team to find out if, maybe down the line, but like that's not a team that I want to see in the first round based on how they're playing right now.
Oh, I totally agree. The other thing about Florida, though, that does intrigue me is that they're Florida, right? Like not a ton of playoff experience. I feel like that's a team who I could see being upset. But again, even in a 7-game series, you look at that offense. I was looking at the numbers yesterday. Huberto has like 110 points and 70-something games. It's just ridiculous. And even though I could see Florida getting upset, I also could see them dominating because that team is so freaking good and they're so good right now. I agree with you again on Shesterkin. Like, I think that is a ridiculously tough series to win if Swayman and or Ullmark are not at the top of their games. I mean, remember the game at MSG, was it February that Shesterkin was nuts and they ended up, I think, losing in a shootout, was it? But Swayman, Matt, went tit for tat with him. So again, that's what you're going to need.
Shesterkin cleared concussion protocol in 22 seconds.
Yes. Threw a fit. Then the guy's like, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I again, if you're going to play New York, you absolutely have to have top tier goaltending. I do wonder though, if you can beat them at 5-on-5, because again, that team is not incredible 5-on-5, and maybe you're a bit better than them at that. So interesting matchups. None are easy. None of these are like, that's why I think we've all kind of been saying, like, when it comes to seeding, everyone wants to pick the perfect matchup. There's no perfect matchup. Like Toronto, is better than maybe past years. Goaltending is weird with them. Defense is still kind of up in the air. I still think you win that series, judging off of history. I feel like you have to win that series. Twitter would be unbearable if the Maple Leafs won that series. That 7-game series would be an easy one to get off of Twitter if the Maple Leafs won. But I still look at that and I go, there's no good matchup. The East is too good for there to be a good matchup. I don't think the Bruins are a great matchup for teams. Like, I don't think teams are hoping that they get the Bruins.
No, yeah, especially like I mentioned the Panthers and not wanting to find out if like that offense holds up in the playoffs. Well, the Panthers probably look at the Bruins and figure like, all right, well, the Bruins have been one of the best defensive teams all season, have great defensive structure for the most part. Like, that's probably a team they don't want to face because they would much rather face a team that's a little sloppy defensively and will give them chances like a Washington would. So,
yes,
I'm sure they probably look at the Bruins and think, if they're being honest, like that's one team that might actually be able to counter our offense.
Yeah, no, I totally see it. So we will see. Playoffs are coming quick, not as quick as we'd like, but they are coming. Scott, before you go, what would you like to plug? What can the people look forward to? When can they listen? All those things.
They can listen to WEEI Skate Podcast. We record every week, actually recording later on Monday. So there'll be an episode of that on Tuesday. And then Sunday Skate every Sunday morning on WEEI through the playoffs, 11 a.m. Me, Matt Kalman, and Andrew Raycroft.
Dream team right there. That's talk about the perfection line. But anyways, yes, make sure to go do all that. For CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.